Hello, Anime Visor here,
and SiGNUM,
with a review for the Daihasei Festival Arc in a certain scientific Railgun T, aka the first 15 episodes of Railgun T. A Certain Scientific Railgun T is the third season of, well, A Certain Scientific Railgun, a spin-off series from A Certain Magical Index. Due to a certain pandemic along with occasional hiccups in production, an anime that would normally be about to wrap up is only a little past halfway through, and the remaining episodes won't start airing till the end of July. But since a pretty big story arc recently finished up, I thought I'd at least review and share my thoughts on it.
I assume with all the production issues, this season of Railgun turned out a lot like Season 3 of Index?
Surprisingly, no. Despite all the issues in production, not only is it a more coherent anime, it looks better and has better animation than the third season of Index.
How is that possible?
We'll get into that a little later on why, despite all the problems in production, it outshines the main entry in the franchise. However, let's first get everyone on the same page with the synopsis for the anime. As I mentioned, Railgun T is the third season of the Railgun series, a spin-off from the Index series, that follows a certain level 5 Railgun, Hikoto Misaka, aka Best Girl from the Index series, as well as her friends, Kuroko Shirai, Kazare Ueharu, as well as the best girl in the Railgun series, Ruiko Saten.
So Misaka is the best girl in Index, but Saten is the best girl in Railgun? Why?
Well, not to spoil anything, and I'll probably touch on this a little more later, but Saten is the best wing woman in anime. Period. Bar none. Anyway, the first 15 episodes of Railgun T focus on the Daihasei Festival Arc, which also made an appearance in the second season of Index, similarly to the Sisters Arc that happened in both anime. The Daihasei Festival Arc features the schools from all over Academy City competing in various sports, but it's not all fun and games. Academy City is more open than usual, and various factions have taken the opportunity to infiltrate the city. As the festival proceeds, people lurking in the shadows begin to appear, with Makoto Misaka in their sights. And once again, Misaka and her friends are shown just how dark Academy City could be. Gosh, the Daihasei Festival Arc in Railgun is just sort of everything you want the Railgun and Index series to be. Mostly decent to pretty good animation with a coherent story. You'd be surprised how hard that is to get out of JC Staff anime these days. There was a time between the late 2000s to about the mid-2010s that when you saw JC Staff was animating a series, you'd be pretty happy or content with that. But nowadays you see an anime animated by JC Staff, and it's just fear and trepidation. How will they screw this up? Is the first thing that pops into my head. A studio that's known for Toradora and Pet Girl of Sakura So would later put out anime like the second season of One Punch Man, PowerPoint presentations like Season 2 onwards of Food Wars, and the incoherent mess that is Index 3. Now I'm not saying JC Staff is bad. Given enough time and the proper director and crew, they can still put out a good anime. Even without time, due to a pandemic here for Railgun T, the director Tatsuyuki Nagai and his crew still put out a top-notch anime.
Makes you wonder why the spin-off gets better treatment than the main series.
Part of it is the Railgun anime was and is pretty popular in Japan. It's probably not outlandish to say that Railgun is JC Staff's flagship anime, despite it being a spin-off. They're gonna make sure they get it right. On top of that, Index, with its story being so long, and there are so many characters belonging to so many factions, 26 episodes across 3 seasons just isn't enough to properly adapt it. Where Railgun just happens to have a smaller world scope, with less characters, shorter story thus far, it's easier to adapt. There have also been borderline horror stories that have come out of Index 3's production, that the director didn't even know it was going to be a thing until a few months before it was supposed to air, and that originally the plan was to make a reboot of A Certain Magical Index instead of making a third season. Now, I'm not trying to defend Index or anything. I do prefer the Railgun manga over trying to keep up with Index light novels, but hopefully you can see why Railgun tends to be the better anime over Index. Part of it may also be that Index herself isn't really in Railgun in any meaningful way, but it's probably more due to the fact that its source material is easier to adapt. Of course, that doesn't explain Accelerator's anime, or the second season of One Punch Man, or most of Food Wars, but I'm also not here to talk about them. So let's get back on track and focus on Railgun T. For an anime that was delayed multiple times for production and pandemic reasons, it looks pretty good. There were a couple of scenes in episode 14 towards the end that looked a bit shaky with some background characters, but regarding a certain event that happened earlier in that very episode that somehow still looked pretty good, despite all the hangups in production, I'll consider that a win in my book. I'm going to try and not spoil anything. It's a pretty crazy scene that I'm sure leaves some people scratching their heads at what happened. I'll say it's briefly hinted at in season 1 of Index, but if you've only watched Railgun, you might be pretty confused. As for the explanation about that crazy thing that happened and how it was possible, don't worry. From what I've heard, even the original light novel hasn't fully explained it yet either, and including its sequel light novel series, there are over 40 volumes of a certain magical index, and it still hasn't explained that detail about a certain character. So when you get to a certain scene in episode 14 and are left a little confused, don't worry, so is everyone else. Albeit maybe for different reasons. Unexplained plot points aside, I really did like this first arc in Railgun T. A big reason why was the characters. It's always nice to see Misaka and her plight dealing with the dark side of Academy City, and a character like Satin will always be welcome. As I mentioned before, she is the best wing woman in anime, period, bar none. She really wants to help her friends as much as possible, weird as she is at times, and in general is a fun character.
Yes, I do.
But where Railgun T has done a good job is giving much needed characterizations to characters like Kongo, as well as one of Misaka's biggest rivals, Misaki Shokuho. Kongo is a bit arrogant but always willing to help a friend, and Shokuho, who is a huge thorn in Misaka's side, does have her reasons for doing what she does and the way she goes about doing it, and is easily the biggest winner for character development in Railgun T. By the end of the arc, I'd found her to be kind of endearing, but she's also the type of person to not let the chance slip by to get under Misaka's skin. Their constant squabbling I found fun to watch, and brings a little life to the anime, something that was lacking in Index 3's anime and Accelerators. Those two anime felt more like they were going down a checklist, making sure they covered all the important bits from the source material, while Railgun T covers all the little stuff with the characters too, and it makes it feel more organic and lively, or fun in other words. Mixed with some pretty hype stuff regarding Misaka, the Daihasei Festival Arc is what you like to see out of the Index and Railgun series. Seeing how well Railgun has been handled over the years compared to Index, it does make you wonder how good the Index anime could have been, but that just wasn't in the cards.
So can I watch Railgun without watching Index?
I do think it's possible. You would need to be aware that there are things that happen in Railgun that may be set up or explained at some point in Index, but if you want to watch an anime for its characters and aren't too concerned about the overarching narrative between the two series, yeah, I think Railgun can stand on its own fairly decently. It having a smaller world scope focusing on a smaller cast of characters than Index does is simpler and less complex. Obviously, Railgun wouldn't exist without Index, but compared to Index, the Railgun series seems to be taking the less is more approach. On top of Index 3 being hamstrung by the production committee, it was in a lose-lose scenario with its anime. That is all to say, the Daihasei Festival Arc was pretty good in Railgun T. Despite the production issues, the crew overcame them the best they could. The characters were handled very well, and we should be getting more of some of them. So I'm very much looking forward to the final 10 episodes, which will be covering the Dreamranker arc, I assume. As I said, you should be able to watch the Railgun series without too much issue if you're unfamiliar with Index, so advise to go ahead and watch it. Railgun hits on some dark topics at times, but overall is a good series with fun, well done characters. And that's continued so far in the first arc here in Railgun T. With all that said, that'll wrap up my thoughts on a certain scientific Railgun T, the Daihasei Festival Arc. What are your thoughts on Railgun T so far? Let us know in the comments below. As always, I've been Anime VISOR.
And I've been SiGNUM.
Thanks for watching, and goodbye.
Goodbye.